Welcome to another episode of the Wandering Wayfinders. And once again, Diana,
Hi.
how are you doing?
I'm good. And you?
Very good, very good. So today we said we're going to discuss a few topics, and including in those topics, we're going to go and chat about solo traveling, interesting places to visit, and probably some tips and tricks about traveling.
That's exactly what we're going to discuss today.
Great, great. So, when it comes to solo traveling, do you have any tips that come to mind?
Yes, especially as a woman, I think that safety is like one of the top tip that I'm like really aware of because I think that if you're a woman, you're a little bit more in danger when you go alone around the world. So
100%.
uh, the first things that I check when I book a flight or where I like decide where I want to go is just see how safe is that country for women. So
Yeah,
this is the first tip that I want to share.
that's true. And I think we can even talk about that because as a man, safety never comes into mind. Okay, I think sometimes as a black man, I'm like, okay, fine, there's some places I don't want to go, but
Right?
in general, as a man, I've never felt like the first thing on my list is, okay, how safe is that country? And I think we do take that for granted a lot of times when we travel. I've heard a few people say that also when they solo, a few ladies say that when they solo travel, they sometimes have it's usually a different experience than if they're with a partner or someone else. And that's usually also shocking.
Yes, it is true. Because when I solo, I don't do usually a lot of solo traveling because it's not always like the first choice. If also because when you are with someone, you have a little bit more fun, and it is a different type of fun. Let's say like that. And when you're solo travel, you have fun, but it's just a little bit different. You need to be really aware of what you do and who is around you because you never know what is gonna happen, and you are alone there and you know nobody. So one other thing related to safety is always let someone know where you are before going through a travel. So, for example, let your parents know that you are going to this place, or let a friend know where you're going. And if you feel unsafe, like just immediately write to someone, like, I'm a little bit suspicious of that man, of that
Yeah.
woman, I don't know. Like, check in a couple of hours if I'm still alive, like something like that.
It's
So, little
true.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
also, sorry.
no, 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 go ahead. Sorry.
Also with like social media, if you are a person that like to share history on Instagram about what you do during the day, especially while you're traveling, don't post immediately after you took that content. Like wait a few hours or the day after to release it, because you never know that somebody see that thing and you're like, oh, okay, then that man or that person comes to you and you're a little bit like, what I'm going to do right now. So you just be aware, be careful.
That's so true. And I do remember a few you see the videos online of people talking about solo traveling. And with that, I've seen some funny videos, but they're also shedding light on a problem that exists. For example, you've got the solo travel ladies who go to places like India, and they'll be hanging out on the beach and they'll have all these men come up and take pictures of them or take pictures with them. And the lady who put the video up was making fun of it, and she said, oh, I just start charging them like a couple of dollars for every picture. But those situations, although we make light of them, they can turn pretty dangerous and
Yes.
uncomfortable. And yeah,
And also, for example, for example, you use the transport, always check the people around you. Because, for example, the other day, one of my friends told me that she was helping this man with giving him the charger for the phone. And then he started having a conversation with my friend, and my friend then was a little bit like suspicious about him because he started to asking weird question about her and something really intimate. So she was scared and she didn't know what to do. And also she was alone in the train, so she didn't know what to do really, and who to ask for any help. So yes, always check
Yeah.
an extra check when you solo travel. Just this, like,
Yeah, just stay
extra
safe.
careful.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have these conversations, and I think even before you go traveling to a new destination, chat to your friends and listen out for all these experiences that have been had, so you can make proper judgments when you're getting close to your travel date, or even when you're out there. I do think for men, there's not much, there's not much safety we really think about. So maybe this point doesn't work. But I do think maybe if you're a person of color, picking the countries you go to, don't expect everyone to be as happy to see you as you are to be there. So you've obviously got to think about those situations and where you're put in. And apart from that, I think safety wise, men, we just appear and it's fine, which is sad, but but yeah.
Understandable, but said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing though we can chat about is probably the other versions of safety in terms of the food you eat, health.
Yes,
So
that's true.
So a lot of things that happen, or a lot of situations you find yourself in when you're traveling in a new country is, I want to taste everything. And being foodies, the minute you see some nice food, you're like, I'm going to try that. But there are times when you get into a situation where it's a street vendor that's selling food and you're like, oh, no, it's safe, it should be fine. And then fast forward a couple of days and your tummy isn't feeling as good. So, so
And you
yeah,
end up being super sick for the next month simply because you eat the little thing in
it
the street.
is. It is. And honestly, I've got one story. I remember when we had a barbecue right here in Kenya, actually, but we got the meat from the barbecue. I don't eat meat, but the people in the party who were eating the meat, it was actually roasted right there in the wild by these Maasai warriors. I think they run like a whole experience where it's like, come and eat meat that's made in traditional Maasai African tribe ways. And before the meat was made, they had this special sausage that they make out of, honestly, it's probably like congealed blood, literally. So
Tasty,
yeah.
delicious.
Yeah. So as you know, with most adventurous travelers, I could see people reaching in and they were grabbing it, and I was thinking to myself, we're in the middle of the bush. There's no running water, so we don't have food safety 101 is like running water is something you need so you can clean up. There was like jerry cans of water, but in general, it wasn't the most healthiest or safest way to be dining. And true to form, fast forward a few days later, and almost everyone who had tried that delicacy had stomach issues and was suffering and it was pretty bad because I think they had, like, it was a month, as you said, they were suffering from those things. So you just got to be aware.
Yeah, and also when you travel in certain places, for example, if you travel to somewhere exotic where the food is super is made with a lot of spices and etc. Like bring with you some medicine that you know that can help you to survive and
Yes.
return home.
That's true. That's true. Spices is another thing as well. On the lighter note, I think yeah, going to a place where there's spices and then trying super hot spice, like maybe it's safe to say if you're in a new place and you don't know what their tolerance is for spice, maybe just say mild.
Yeah, that is fine. Like you are tourists, and you don't have to dine there. Just trying super spicy is the food.
Yeah. Remember that you're not. I know a whole big part about traveling is the idea of I want to be like the locals, and part of that is I want to eat at the local, at where the locals eat. I want to eat the food they eat. Yeah, but sometimes maybe it's okay to eat tourist food because
Yeah, it's made for the people that are not used to that type of food. So yeah, I mean, it's
exactly,
okay.
exactly. I think I had an interesting um, sort of experience when I traveled to Canada. I didn't know how different their food is, even in comparison to food I had in Europe or food I had in Kenya. I was actually struggling a bit with the food they had out there, and I couldn't understand why. And obviously, it's just something with how they grow their food or how they store their food. I mean, America is completely different from everyone, but it was a weird situation for me to be because a lot of the times you think that the issue is you've gone to a less developed country and that's why you're having issues with the food. But this can also happen if you fly to a totally different side of the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that is true. For example, the other week, my brother went to the south of Italy to for a little trip with his girlfriend, and he eats something. I think was like a cannoli or something like that, something sweet. And then for 2 weeks, he was super sick with his stomach, and he was yeah, and he was like. Going back to my parents' home because he was like he couldn't stand up. He was like
Wow.
really bad in a really
Yeah.
bad situation. So yeah, it could also happen like in your home, in your country. Like you should be careful
A
also
hundred
because
percent.
you never know.
You never know. You've got to be so careful with these things. Do you have a personal travel tip you'd like to add?
Yes, when you book some a flight or also train, always check on other sites where you can compare the price because there are a lot of offers, especially if you are students still in university. There are a lot of offers that can help you buying tickets that are a little bit less pricey than the usual one. And so yes, always compare prices because you can just have like a good offer and you know in this
That's true.
economy it's better save some money.
Save. Always save. Even if you can afford the luxury option, try and get a deal on the luxury option because a lot of times, as you said, with the flight tickets, but also even hotel reservations, sometimes you'll have a flash sale. So it's always important to have those those sites or even just that link to find out more information. And I do think what you said about students is true. There's so many student offers. Like it's worth it. You can end up saving insane amounts of money on just a flight ticket just because you're a
Yes.
student.
Mm-mm. I know, for example, that with talking about flight, I know that with Turkish airline and also Iberia, there are like a proper plan dedicated to students in the university. So why not check out like if you can still be in their
Yeah.
plan and like enjoy the disadvantages that you have.
That's true. That's so true. I would also add there that even if you're traveling to a destination, depending on the type of traveler you are, but it might be worth it to even check out different cities in that same country to fly into. because, for example, if for the time when we came to Italy, flying into Padua make more sense than flying into, I think the other one was, uh, not so sure, Milan. Yeah, it was Milan. So we found out that it's cheaper to get a flight from our first destination to Padua than it is from our destination to Milan. And honestly, when you're in the country, if they have a good rail system or public transport system, you can go to those cities that you were hoping to visit anyway.
Yes, that's true. Also, especially in Europe, you can do this really often because Europe is really good connected, uh, not only with other countries but also in the same country. So if for example, go to Germany and you want to go to Berlin, but you're like the flight is super pricey, maybe you can go like in another city that is near Berlin and then take the train and go there. Like it's the same.
Yeah, exactly the same. The only one I would say is Portugal is a weird one. Portugal doesn't have a very good rail system, which surprised me, but it was still good enough for you to go from city to city to city. And then what they have in Portugal, I think, was very cheap car rentals. And that just made sense, which is probably another tip. Think about renting a car on your holidays because in Europe, it's reasonably priced, I would say. And if you're going to go to multiple cities, sometimes it's good to have that freedom if you can and if
That's
you have a
true.
license.
That's true. And also, talking about public transportation, always check the hours of the transportation because here in Italy, sometimes the metro, the subway close at certain hour during the week, and during the weekend it close another hour. So maybe if you, I don't know, you go to a city for a concert and you know that you're going and really late in the night, and always check how to return to your hotel because sometimes you don't know that the subway is closing like at 11 or 12 in the night, and you're like, oh my god, now how gonna go back?
We're
Like,
stuck.
now what I do? Yeah. And usually the stadium where the concert are taking place are always far away of the city, so
That's true.
it's not that like that easy going back to the city. So maybe the taxi, but the taxi is super pricey, and sometimes
Yeah.
they are full of people. Like you never know.
Yes.
Always check the public transportation, how it works, and how you can connect to a city to another, or how you can achieve go to a place to another. Like few
That's
things.
that's so true. And a good point you made there as well was taxis. Using a local taxi. I would always say if you have the Uber app, it's probably always safer to use that because the taxi person who's driving the taxi will be registered on the Uber app or whatever ride sharing app you have. You'll have a way to track who they are. I've I have heard a few horror stories of people in places. When I was living in Romania, there was a lady who used just one of those cabs or taxis that you pick on the side of the road and had a horrible experience with the driver. So it's all about just limiting the chances for something to go wrong, especially when solo traveling.
Yeah. Let's say that what we see on series, on films, sometimes also happen in real life, especially with cab and travel. You
Yeah,
never know.
you never know. Not everyone out there is a good person.
Sadly.
So, yeah, yeah, true. I think also when it comes to solo traveling, especially pick destinations that have that similar solo traveling culture about them because then you get deals on hostels you can actually run into. Depending on the person you are, maybe you'll want to make friends as you travel. So it's always worth it if you're a solo traveler. Book a couple of nights in a hostel, and get to know some people.
Yeah, I think that is a fun way to meet people from all over the world and also to have somebody to travel with. Even though you are on solo travel, but you meet new person and you can do new experiences. That is not always that bad. Like be always open minded.
True, true. And if you meet someone on a travel trip, for example, I would say here in Kenya, a lot of the trips that we do aren't necessarily geared to a one person. So if you want to go on safari, the more people you can bring along with you on safari, the cheaper it actually is. Especially with booking hotel rooms in the reserves, so in the Masai Mara or across in Tanzania in Serengeti, it's a lot cheaper if it's two of you in the room. But if you book as a solo person and you take up a whole room, it costs slightly more. So I would say it's always important, even if you're planning a solo travel trip, maybe look and see if you could just pull one more friend with you. You'd actually make tons of savings.
Yeah, it's true. Especially when it comes to hotel, the hotel for a room for one person is costs more than the one for two person, and it's like
Yeah.
why? I'm just one. Why?
Yeah, the hotel industry is so cheeky about how they make their money. And usually, why they give you that room rate, they'll call it a room rate because they want to sell a whole room. And in their eyes, which is kind of weird, they will look at one person in a room and go, well, I need to get as much money out of that one person as if there were two people in that room, because they're thinking, oh man, that room can take two people. Now I have to give it to one person. I'm losing money. So it's such a weird, it's probably the only industry in the world where an individual or going as one person costs more than if you go as two people.
Yes, the injustice.
We need to do something about that.
Yes. Another tip about solo travel or any type of travel is always like have a backup plan, sort of a backup plan, like for any inconveniences. Like you need to be like there and be prepared of what could happen. So again, with the public transportation, if the train is cancelled, like you need to go somewhere, you need to like have an idea of how go there, even though the plan is the
Yeah,
train is there. Like even with flight, if the flight is cancelled, what are you gonna do?
a
Like
100%. I think, as you said, a backup plan and a backup plan to the backup plan. I know this is a funny comparison, but I just watched that new Moana movie, and there's a character there who's like, I've got, I think they were trying to take down a massive clam or something, and the first spear they had, they threw and lost it. And the lady who's like the engineer was like, don't worry, I've got a backup spear. And then that one dropped, and she was like, nah, I got a backup spear to that as well. Two, three backups. And then it got to the fourth backup, and she was like, okay, four backups is crazy for everyone. So I don't have a fourth one. So it does help to have more than one backup just in case, because when things get thick, when things get hard out there, like when it rains, it pours. So it's
yeah,
good to
it's
be,
true.
yeah.
And when you think that is already bad, the situation is gonna getting worse. Like 100% is going to get worse, even though you don't want it. But data is like that. Like you can control.
Yeah, you can't control. You can just make it a soft landing. and
Yeah.
and I do think when you're solo traveling, as you mentioned earlier, share your location with your family, keep everyone regularly updated. Um, Even when you're staying, if you're staying at a hostel, make a friend or two, tell them, hey, this is what I'm doing today. What are you guys doing? Just so you have an idea, and you have people who, when it gets to the point if something goes wrong, they'll be asking like, hey, where's Diana? And then that's all you want to be able to do so that you have that little bit of safety.
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing about solo traveling in general, is like, as we said before, have a backup plan, but also be flexible. Like, don't stick too much to the plan that you did. So be open to new experiences, meet new people, and do different stuff. Like, you are traveling, you should enjoy yourself. So
Yeah. That's 100% right on the money there, because when you travel to a new destination, you have so many experiences you were not even aware of until you land in that destination. So let's say we went to Spain and we were like, oh, I want to go to Madrid, or I want to go to Barcelona, I want to see the architecture, I want to visit this basilica. But then when you get there, you run into a local, or you see a flyer on the street for like a really nice performance that's happening. And if you had already booked your trip literally minute to minute, and I've already bought tickets for this, I've already bought tickets for that, you won't have that space to have an off the beaten path experience. And honestly, traveling is a lot about situations like that.
yeah, it's true. And talking about going to museum and etc., and buying ticket, a lot of the time, especially here in Italy, but also in France, I know that you can like have a sort of a ticket that contains many museums, and this really help when it comes to the price, because in
Yeah.
Italy sometimes museums and places, like especially palace, cost a lot because they are like something historical. So like, always check how you can have a deal about where you're going to visit.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And when you pick where you want to visit, it's also important to decide what you want to visit. I know, for example, in Paris, everyone wants to see the Eiffel Tower, but I would urge a lot of people to not make the Eiffel Tower their number one spot, because it tends to be busy, it tends to be very touristic. It also, it's great for pictures, but if your main idea was I'm coming to Paris for the Eiffel Tower, you might also be a little bit let down when you see it, because yeah.
It is just a tower.
Yes, exactly. It's just an iron tower.
Yeah. Well, I know that, talking about being a student, I know that until you are 26 years old, you are really past this age. But for the younger listener, let's say that you can go to Paris and visit all the museum, like, gratis without paying the ticket. So like,
What?
if you, yes, you didn't know that.
I didn't.
So if you're young as me, you can like go there and save money and enjoy a lot of culture and a lot of museum, especially if you are one person that really love art. In Paris, there is the Louvre, there is Musée d'Orsay, and other plenty of museum dedicated to art. So yeah.
That's a very good tip, and I'm so sad that I didn't know that, because there was a time when I was 24 and I was in Paris and I paid to go into museums. So it's good to know that you can get those deals, and I think it ties in well with like student. That's well to do with student offers. It's very important that when you're planning a destination trip, or you're already in a destination, just pull up Google and ask them what student offers you have, what deals do you have. On this end, it's for people under the age of 26. If you're a much older traveler, if you're a senior in your 60s, you probably get similar deals. So it's yeah, it's always important to look at those. Yeah, which is probably the next time I'm ever gonna get a deal. But no, it's good.
You need to wait a little bit. But
Yeah. Not yet there,
Oh
but
well,
close.
well. Also with the new, like if you are a wedding or something like that, you also have deals. So if you are going on honeymoon or something like that, in certain places you get deals. I know that for a cruise or something like that, if you are new lads, I think, I see, you have really good deals on going to the restaurant, having the best suite, and etc.
Yeah, so it's really important to check out these deals in general. Everything you do, just check out for deals because you never know. It might just align with your certain situation, and hey, you'll get away with a little bit off the top, or you'll get a really nice room. You never know. I know a couple of places. If you even if you tell them it's your birthday, you might just get like a little present or a little gift. So it's
Yeah, it's true. For example, here in Turin, there are a lot of, no, not a lot of, but a few cinemas that if you, on the day of your birthday, you can go there and watch a movie for free. So, yeah,
wow. There you
that's good.
go. Nice. Which probably means like our next tip should be travel around big days in your life. So travel around your birthday, travel around your anniversary. If you're about to get married or get married, do a honeymoon. Like these are the best times to travel because you get these offers. Even if you do travel over Christmas, oh my goodness, if depending on how where you are in life or the type of person you are, some of the cheapest plane tickets you will get will be Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Like on the day of the festivity, everything
Yeah.
is cheaper.
Yes, yes. It's perfect. I think depending on how you feel about Christmas, I would say, you know what? Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, catch a flight to somewhere else. It will be so cheap. The flight, maybe Christmas Day. Christmas Eve, you might catch a few people who are also rushing back home for Christmas. But Christmas Day, you might have a flight where it's completely empty, honestly, and you'll get like
Yeah.
good deals. So,
And also, for check like the season of the country, because sometimes when especially in the country that are near the equator, when there is warmer, um, the flight tends to be cheaper because nobody wants to go there because it's too warm. And so if you a person that can support, can live in a country where it's super hot, that's like if you want to go to Dubai when it's 30, 50 degrees, and you know that you can still enjoy the type of weather, let's just check for the flight during that time because it's cheaper than the flight that uh, normal people tend
ah,
to buy.
100%. 100%. So when you go to, especially, I love the example you gave, Dubai. Dubai, summer in Dubai gets so hot. We're talking 50 degrees Celsius that that's the best time to travel if you can because the hotels are cheaper, the flights are cheaper. Um, and the good thing with Dubai is for a lot of the time, you don't really need to be outside the house. Everything is already catered to how hot it is there. So walking from one of the malls to another, there's a literal walkway that you can do between two malls in Dubai, and you never have to leave the mall. Like you just walk, you get on a bridge, and it's all air conditioned, and you walk to another mall. When you're walking to the train station, it's the same thing. They really make sure that you don't have to leave indoors because of how hot it gets there. So that's a good point for Dubai. Countries like Kenya and East Africa, depending on the season, and usually this is the way to look at it. So summertime in Europe and Western countries is probably the worst time to come to Kenya because the rates, it's our high season, it's our peak season, because that's when everyone else has time off and comes over there. So you're talking double the price for a safari during peak season. And the viewing itself, I mean, it's almost crazy. The Masai Mara, you'll have three, four, five, six, almost 10 vehicles rushing towards a lion if they see a lion, rushing towards a group of leopards as they see leopards. So I would say you've got to try and plan your traveling. If you really want to enjoy the experience, you've got to plan outside peak seasons. West Africa, I would say right about now, right before summer hits, is probably one of the best times to travel. Now we're in low season. You're paying almost half the price of what you'd be paying. So
Also, I know that, for example, talking about Asia,
yeah,
Japan right now is getting like the perfect temperature. It's not too warm and humid because during the summer it's just really difficult to live there because it's super humid and not a lot of people can handle that. And the same in the winter because it's really rigid. It's snowing. It's not for everyone. So right now during the springtime, and also because there are the sakura that is blooming, it's a beautiful period to go there. The price of everything is super high. So or go right before or right after this season. I think it is best for like still enjoy and still have a good experience of the country because when there are a lot of people, you still have a good experience, but not as good as if you are like a little bit more
yeah,
calm. Like
yes, it's true. Oh man, it's interesting that you said that the sakura or the cherry blossoms. I think that's what they are.
yeah,
That's something I would have to do. That looks beautiful. I don't know how because it's as you said it's peak season because everyone's there at that time. So you almost have to plan just before.
years before
Yeah.
or years before, like
So
right right when you know that that you want to go in that period and like you want to go right now that is April, like, and you need to plan like 1 year before sometimes
that's
because
true.
when right like 1 year or just when you want to go the flight are really cheap. I
That's
don't know
true.
why. Like, oh, really far away when you need to go, or right before you want to go, the flights are cheap.
You're right. You're right. So you've either got to do when it comes to planning and this is a good point to address because it comes to planning a destination that you want to visit at peak times because there's just some places. I mean, Europe is beautiful in summer, but you can't get around the crowd. So how are we going to plan that or make it easier for you to do that? And as you said, plan a whole year before so that the prices you're looking at are cheap, or depending on how spontaneous you are, plan 2 days before, and you'll get really cheap
The
deals.
last ticket,
Yeah. So
especially with Ryanair, like or EasyJet, you get there like
yes,
the ticket also for €5, which is like crazy. At least here in Europe. I don't know
yes.
if you need to travel in Africa how it is, but here in Europe, because everything is like, near, like you for €5, I can go to Spain, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about Europe is that ability to be like in a totally different country. I saw this guy do a video online of him going to get a haircut, and he wasn't. I think he left from the UK and flew to Morocco for a haircut because he kept saying, "Oh, of course it's social media, so it's for the video." But he said, "Oh, a haircut in London is so expensive." I think he was getting like £50, and he said, "You know what? I can get that for cheaper." So he booked an Ryanair flight to Morocco, and he had family in Morocco, so he's not paying for accommodation. And then he got the haircut for like £1, and he said it's cheaper to fly out and get the haircut. So Europe has a very special thing that it's able to do with those internal flights. And I would say just a tip for the internal flights is even though you're trying to save as much money as you can, I would almost say pay for that extra baggage because the amount of stress you're going to get trying to squeeze your little bag into that small cabin that they have before you check in, I just don't think it's worth it.
Sometimes it is not. Like the last time that I did it, like I was going to Spain. I had just my backpack, and I was staying there for 1 week and something. And I was like, after a while, I was like, I don't know how can I survive like few days. Like, oh my god, because I was buying a lot of things.
Yeah.
That is the problem, because when
Yes.
you're planning and you say, okay, just one backpack is enough, but when you have to turn back home, that is the
That's
problem. How you gonna put everything inside there? You're not able to.
that's where they get you. That's where they
Yeah.
get you when it's coming back, because you book a return, and when you book a return, it's the same exact conditions as your outbound flight. And yeah, who goes on holiday and doesn't want to bring back souvenirs? So you've got to figure out how to do it correctly. Luckily, you can always add on a bag. So that's one way to look at it. I do think that another point about maybe individual solo traveling is when you book flights, there's different classes that you can get even in economy. So depending on the certain restrictions you have on your ticket, depending on how sure you are or how frugal you want to be, you can book a ticket that has no changes, um, or that you'll have to pay for changes, and has no cancellation, and has a cancellation fee, I think it is. And if you do that, you end up getting a cheaper ticket. So there is ways to navigate around to get a cheaper ticket. It might not be the most comfortable ticket. You won't have extra leg room. You might be in a middle seat. If you miss your flight, you can't get your money back, but
Like no
it's cheap.
refund, but
Yeah.
like the 1,000 for the ticket, but no refund. That's sad, but the problem is on you. Like you did miss
Yeah.
the flight, so
Yeah.
it's your bad. It's not
Yeah.
the airplane's bad. Like,
Yeah. And I think that then brings us to our next point, which is like, choose where to save. Don't try and save at every single point, because you also want to enjoy your trip. You also want to travel in comfort. You also want to have a good experience. So, depending on the type of individual you are, because I personally like, well, as I've grown older, I think I've changed how I was able to travel. When I was younger, I didn't really care what plane seat I got. I didn't really care what accommodation I stayed in. So I'll do backpackers, sit on a middle seat with like no extra leg room, and I'll be fine. I'm like, I'm going on holiday. I'll spend all my time outside the hotel room anyway, so it doesn't matter. But as time has gone on, these days when I'm traveling, I'm always like, can I get an airplane seat with extra leg room? I'll pay for extra leg room because I want to be comfortable if it's a long flight.
especially you, because you are tall, so
Exactly.
you have legs.
Yeah.
I'm a normal person, so I don't really need that extra space for legs.
Yeah.
But you are tall.
I think that, first of all, that's so unfair that that's a thing that you get charged for, being tall on a flight. It's like, oh, you want to be comfortable? Pay for it. Whereas
Justice again.
the justice. Because short people, like Diana, your height, you're fine in a plane. Like you can sit comfortably, no one bothers you. If I don't buy extra leg room, I'm not only bothering myself, but I'm bothering the person next to me, because they're like, oh, this guy's legs just everywhere. you know? So, but it's all about picking where you want to spend your money. Some people love staying at 5-star hotels, but don't care about what flight they get on. Some people will fly business, but won't want to spend money on a 5-star hotel. So it's all about designing your perfect travel trip.
Yeah, and also another tip is, if you're going to do long distance flight or travel, always check the travel insurance, because that is important. Like, I know it's pricey, but again, you never know. you never know what is going to happen. So if you don't want to like spend a lot of money on something like flight or anything else or hotel, spend money on your travel insurance, because that really gonna helps you when you are in
Yep.
difficulties.
Yep. 100%. I would almost say it's not worth it to travel without travel insurance. Like, just get it. I mean, some countries you go to, you might be okay. I think if you go to like places that have free healthcare, you might be okay. You might survive, depending on how long you stay there. But honestly, this is your health we're talking about. You might as well just cover yourself and make sure you're good for that period of time. And these days, you can get travel insurance online for a lot cheaper than you would even imagine. So it's, I think it's worth it. Yeah.
Mhm. That's true. And as we said at the beginning of the episode, like if you're gonna eat something bad, you know that you're gonna survive with your travel insurance somehow. Because if you go to the hospital, that is covered. A little bit is covered.
It's true. That's so true. And honestly, no, it's a good point because I personally, because I wasn't living in Kenya for the last 5 6 years, but I would come to visit family. And when I would come to visit family, I wouldn't have insurance because in my mind I'm like, oh, I'm coming home. And because I grew up here, I used to have insurance here. So I didn't register that I was coming to a country without insurance. So I would get here, and one of the times I came back, I actually got malaria. And I went to the hospital, I got the meds, and I looked at the bill and I was like, you know what? I'm getting travel insurance. There's no way. Why am I forking out all this money for my health? Something that, I had no control over. A silly mosquito bit me, and now I'm paying $200-300 to cover my medicine and my treatment. So, yeah, it's worth it. So now, everywhere I go, I get travel insurance.
Yeah. Because as we said through all these episodes, you never know. You never
You
know.
never know. You never know what will happen. But yeah, I think we've covered quite a few points on things that will make traveling just that little bit easier. I don't know if you have any more you want to add or.
I don't think so. Like, I think these are really good tips that we share with the listeners. So yeah.
Yeah. So there you have it, guys. Like, we have covered a few tips that you should look and probably jot down and just keep when you're planning your next trip. And yeah, just be ready to enjoy. At the end of the day, just travel.
Yeah, that's the best tip. Just travel. You wanna travel? Just do it.
Exactly. But anyway, thank you for tuning into our episode, and hopefully we've taught you a few things. And if you have anything else, just reach out.